Okay, everyone, welcome to the second Gen 3 draft tournament. Now, obviously, you've all studied the Google Doc very well leading up to this and watched the video from the first time, right? We are so back, everyone. For those of you who don't know, earlier this year, my friends and I did a Pokemon Gen 3 tournament where we drafted teams from a giant pool of level 70 Pokemon I had prepared and duked it out for the ultimate prize, a plushie. If you haven't seen that video yet, I definitely encourage you to go and watch it. It explains some things I won't repeat here, and there will be some spoilers in this video for that one. Anyway, we had a ton of fun doing that tournament, and at the end of that video, I said I wanted to do another one this summer, so here we are. Truth be told, we actually recorded this video in June, but this was also easily the longest voiceover I ever had to write and record, and there was just never a good time to be able to record it until pretty recently, so that's why we had the delay. We got the whole crew back together, with one exception. Matt had some other commitments come up and wasn't able to make it, so Josie's younger brother Hunter took his spot. Hunter also wasn't able to be there for the draft itself due to a family thing, so with his permission, Josie and Noah picked his team for him. He actually rolled the first pick, so naturally Josie and Noah ended up picking Kyogre for him. Ethan rolled the next one and decided to run it back with Mewtwo, and I ended up being third. I decided to go with Groudon for reasons that'll make sense in a bit. Predictably, the Soul Dew Dragons were the next to go, and at this point I should probably explain why the boxes are organized like this. In my previous video, I said I had an idea for a way to expand the bracket so we could get more matches in and face a greater variety of opponents. I also said I was going to make some changes to movesets and add more Pokemon, so you'll see some new faces like Scizor and Slaking in this video. There's a full list of the changes and additions that were made in the video description if you're interested. Anyway, my idea for expanding the bracket was to start with pool, so the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 8th picks would all be in a pool together, and the other picks would be in a separate pool. So in order to help the players better understand who they'd be facing in their first few battles, I organized the boxes this way, so teams that were in the same pool all showed up together. Noah rolled the 6th pick and chose Lugia, who is a lot more viable now that I've taught it Shadow Ball. And then Alex chose Rayquaza over Ho-Oh. Rayquaza, this thing, got chosen over Ho-Oh. After all the work that I did to elevate Ho-Oh in the meta during the last tournament, it got saved for last? Last? No, I cannot accept this. Ho-Oh is a champion, a beautiful beast who will one day take its place on the throne of the universe. And when it does, these unbelievers will perish in its phoenix flight. Anyway, Jordan ended up with Ho-Oh, which he was pretty happy about. And since this is a snake draft, he got the first pick in round 2 and immediately chose Regice, which gives him the arguably 2 best special walls in the entire pool. Phil went with Regirock, which made me excited for possible explosion strats, and Josie picked Zapdos, since not picking Zapdos was her biggest regret from the previous draft. When it got to me, I ended up picking Entei, since Entei happens to know Solar Beam, and my 3rd round pick was Sceptile. This guy carried me so hard during the first tournament, and that was without access to Guaranteed Stun from Groudon. With Groudon and Entei by its side, Sceptile will be an absolute beast. But arguably scarier is my 4th round pick, Aerodactyl. A speedy rock-flying type pairs perfectly with Groudon and covers a lot of the matchups that my team is currently struggling with, except for Latios and Latias. By this point, a lot of the good Ice Beam users had already been taken, and Ethan even drafted Milotic right before my 5th round pick, so I didn't have that as an option. I had Toxic on Sceptile, which worked great for me last time, but I really needed something to pair with it. Walrein was still available and a solid Pokemon, but honestly, Walrein at this point was better known for cheesing opponents with Sheer Cold, which I wasn't really interested in. I decided to give Scizor a try, since he was added to the draft pool specifically as a Psychic-type counter. Of course, right after I drafted Scizor, everyone started picking Fire-type Pokemon, but hey, what's the worst that could happen? Now before we get to the tournament, I do need to explain a thing about the bracket. In order to facilitate so many pools battles without keeping my friends here all day, I decided to have half the battles be played using Game Boy Advance to Game Boy Advance link cables. So, for example, while Ethan and I duked it out on the big screen, Noah and Alex were on the couch behind us playing on Game Boys. This does mean that I wasn't able to record all of the pools battles. I kept track of everything that happened in pools, and we did record every set from winners and losers brackets, but playing on Game Boys for pools meant we couldn't record everything. Ironically enough though, one of the setups that I did record was a GameCube running the Game Boy player that I used in my Jirachi video, so if you're wondering why half the pools footage looks like this, that's why. Winners and losers brackets will all be on actual GameCube games though. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. Let's start with my pool. My team for this tournament was stored locally on one of the GameCube games, so all of my pool's matchups were recorded. In the first 2 matches, well, they sure happened. Guys, if you're watching this, I am so sorry. Those 2 victories did give me a place in winter semis, so now the only question was who would be joining me there from my pool. My last opponent was Noah, who was 1-1 after Alex apparently hit 2 sheer calls off while ready to take the set against him. Noah would have to defeat me for even a chance of making it into winners, and even then it wouldn't matter if Alex beat Ethan. In game 1 I led with Groudon and Sceptile, which was a mistake. Noah had drafted a Vileplume specifically to deal with my team. Chlorophyll doubles Vileplume's speed stat in harsh sunlight, and the combination of Solar Beam and Sludge Bomb is pretty threatening into my 2 leads. I swapped Sceptile for Entei, who took a surprising amount of damage from Sludge Bomb, and then realized I blundered again since I told Groudon to use Earthquake. So Entei went down, and Groudon took a massive hit from Lugia's Psycho Boost. Vileplume then obliterates Groudon with a Solar Beam before my Starmie could finally take it down. In hindsight, I really should have switched Groudon out, but I really had no way of knowing which of my 2 Pokemon Vileplume would be targeting. The battle went downhill from there. In game 2 I adapted well by leading Entei instead of Groudon. Without the Chlorophyll speed boost, Vileplume could do nothing as Sceptile used Sunny Day, and then Entei obliterated Vileplume with a Flamethrower. Noah then sent in Lapras, which is a pretty odd choice to me given that both of my leads know Solar Beam. Lapras did tank one pretty well though, so I probably should have just doubled up on it instead of going for damage on Lugia, but we went unpunished as Lugia missed a Psycho Boost on Sceptile. So Lapras went down the next turn, and Sceptile survived long enough to land a Toxic on Lugia as well, thanks to Noah going for a recover instead of a KO. So we took that game pretty comfortably. Game 3 I led with Groudon and Aerodactyl, figuring Aerodactyl would be able to keep Vileplume in check even if Noah did lead with it. He didn't, but he did go for a hard switch into it on turn 1, which let me double up into Lapras for a clean KO. What I really didn't account for though was that, as fast as Aerodactyl is, Chlorophyll Vileplume is faster and able to cleanly one-shot Groudon with a Solar Beam. So even though Vileplume went down soon after, and Noah missed another Psycho Boost, it really didn't matter. Raikou came out and I didn't have many great answers into it now that Groudon had been taken down. Raikou was faster than all of my Pokemon except for Aerodactyl, who happened to be weak to Lugia's rain-boosted Hydro Pumps. So I couldn't even set up Sun properly without Noah being able to immediately change the weather back. So Entei was effectively useless, and while Sceptile was able to take Raikou down, it had nothing in the one-on-one against Lugia. So I lost the set. And Ethan ended up pulling the win against Alex, so Noah moved on with me into winners semifinals. Now time to go even more retro with Pool B. By the way, since this was recorded on Game Boy, the battles are all from Hunter's perspective. His first set was against Jordan, who had a very specially bulky team including Regice, Ho-Oh, Umbreon, and Blossom, most of which were Pokemon that made his life difficult during the previous tournament. Unfortunately, there's only so much special bulk you can really have against a Kyogre in the rain. Jordan was able to have Blossom set up Sunlight in Game 1, but unlike Vileplume, this Blossom has a minus speed nature, so even with Chlorophyll active it is still slower than Electrode. Ironically enough, Regice's Quick Claw did activate on the next turn, so had he targeted Electrode in turn 1, Blossom would have been saved. Unfortunately, this was Jordan's first time doing a Game Boy Advance to Game Boy Advance battle, so he didn't realize how the targeting worked and accidentally targeted Kyogre on turn 1. So Blossom went down. Regice's Quick Claw triggered again to take the Electrode down, and Jordan began setting up screens with Espeon, but screens don't really help much against critical hits. And with the rain back online, there was very little Jordan could do at that point. Game 2, Jordan led with Espeon to set up screens immediately. He also decided to forego setting up Sun in favor of damage, which was a pretty good play actually since Electrode knows Rain Dance anyway. Electrode ended up paralyzing Espeon before getting destroyed by a crit from Psychic, and a lucky freeze from Ice Beam stopped Blossom in its tracks. Really terrible luck for Jordan here as his leads were now both helpless. Hunter did misplay here though, as he had Kyogre go for an Ice Beam instead of a Surf, which would have easily KO'd both of Jordan's Pokemon in the rain. But because he didn't, Blossom defrosted the next turn and took Kyogre down with a critical hit Giga Drain. So Flygon came out in place of Kyogre. Even with his best weapon gone, though, Hunter had a lot of strong damage dealers, and some Protect Slowing allowed him to overwhelm Jordan's team with sheer power, despite having Flygon go down in one shot from Regice. Hunter took the set. His next opponent was Phil, coming off of a very hard-fought victory against Josie. Phil led with my beloved Swift Swim Mantine Yuna, who does know Hidden Power Grass, which didn't do much damage. Thunder got the one shot in response. Porygon 2 also has Thunder, but it wasn't enough to KO Kyogre, who got an easy one-shot into Regirock the next turn. Honestly, I question here why Phil even brought Regirock into this fight. Heracross is way better special bulk, especially against a team like this one. Porygon 2 did get the KO that turn, but it really didn't matter at that point. It was too low on HP and Hunter's remaining Pokemon were well equipped to deal with Latias. Game 2 didn't go much better for Phil either. Latias got paralyzed on turn 1 by Thunder, and his Armaldo is very much weak to rain boosted Hydro Pumps. Armaldo does know Earthquake, so this spring actually makes sense if he was hoping Hunter would leave Armaldo alone or miss Hydro Pump. But neither happened and Armaldo went down. Phil was able to tank pretty well and do effective damage the next turn, but this didn't slow Hunter down. Electrode really shines when paired up with Kyogre here, and also doesn't really mind being at low health as long as it's the fastest thing on the field, which it is. Yeah, Hunter wins this one. That now guaranteed him a place in Winners Finals, it was just a question of who would join him. His last match was against Josie, who had also defeated Jordan, and was easily Hunter's toughest matchup. Zapdos and Swampert are a disgusting pair of lead Pokemon and actually can counter a lot of Hunter's team by themselves. Hunter apparently realized this and decided to have Electrode go boom on turn 1, but Josie swapped Zapdos out for Latios, who was able to tank the hit in the red. Swampert also survived, so as Salamence came in for Hunter, Josie fired off an Earthquake, which Aggron barely survives thanks to Salamance's Intimidate activating. So Latios went down to Aggron's Rock Slide. Zapdos came back in and traded hits with Salamence as Hunter and Josie likely expected each other to keep their weaker Pokemon safe with Protect. Neither of them did though, and Swampert's Surf took Aggron down. This forced Hunter to bring in Kyogre, which isn't great because, well, Zapdos. I mean, Kyogre actually did survive Thunder with a sliver of health and took Zapdos down, so in came Meganium, my favorite Zapdos killer, who immediately got crit one-shot by Ice Beam, effectively stealing Josie's fate. But she was far from out of the match. In Game 2, she went ahead and just led with Latios and Swampert, knowing they could take an explosion. Hunter also just chose not to explode, so Electrode went down immediately. Latios and Swampert being alive and healthy also let Josie take down Flygon with ease and put Aggron into critical health. Before too long, she tied up the set. Game 3, they used the same leads, and Hunter did choose to explode this time. However, he chose to bring out Flygon instead of Salamence, which meant this time Swampert was not intimidated and could take Aggron down in one shot with an Earthquake. This left Hunter with 2 dragons against the Latios, who happened to be at +1 speed from a Dragon Dance, so yeah, that didn't go well. Josie claimed first place in the set and in her pool, and she and Hunter both moved on to Winners Finals. Similarly, Noah and I were both 2-1 in our pool, so Noah placed first ahead of me thanks to him beating me 1-on-1. Their reward was an easier matchup in Winners Semis. Noah would fight Hunter, who placed second in his pool, and Josie would battle me. This turned out to be a massive problem for me because Josie's team almost completely counterpicks mine. I did know going in that this would be a shaky matchup for me since I have no Ice-type moves and no Dragon-type moves to use. My best answer into them was Scizor, and in Game 1 I just spaced and forgot to bring Scizor, so I basically had nothing into Latios. Meanwhile, Latios can just 2-shot Groudon with Dragon Claw, and most of my other Pokemon get obliterated by Zapdos' Drill Peck and Thunderbolt. So yeah, I lost Game 1. Game 2 I put my brain cells together and led with Aerodactyl and Scizor, and Josie saw me coming and led with an Arcanine. This Arcanine is actually terrifying into my team. It has Intimidate to weaken my leads, and the stun that Groudon sets up gives it stupid damage potential. In all of my planning for this fight, I didn't bring another fire-resistant Pokemon to switch Scizor into, so Groudon took a massive sun-boosted Overheat as it came in. Arcanine is also holding a White Herb, so the special attack drop from Overheat gets negated here. I swapped Scizor back in to tank an Extreme Speed and stall for time while I took down Arcanine, only for Aerodactyl to miss a Hyper Beam. Which, thinking back on it, was a dumb move from me anyway, since Stab, super effective Ancient Power, is stronger than Hyper Beam anyway. Maybe I was going for a King's Rock flinch, I don't really know. So yeah, Aerodactyl went down, and all I had left was a barely alive Groudon and 2 Pokemon weak to fire, facing an Arcanine in the sun. You can guess how that went. Meanwhile, Hunter and Noah were doing their thing on the other setup. Noah's Raikou was the scariest threat to a water-based team, so naturally he led with that as Hunter opted for his Aggron Electrode pairing. Electrode immediately whiffed a Thunder, which gave Lapras a good opportunity to do some damage, but Noah went for Ice Beam into Aggron instead of Waterfall, so it lived to get off a Rock Slide. Hunter then decided not to push his luck and went for the Protect Explosion combo, KOing Raikou and leaving Lapras in critical health. With Raikou gone, Kyogre could now take the field and immediately froze Hariyama with an Ice Beam. That freeze let Aggron live to fire off another Rock Slide, which took down the Lapras. It was now down to Lugia and a Hariyama who absolutely refused to defrost. Had Hunter taken the opportunity to 2v1 Lugia, he could have won the match easily. Instead, he had Aggron go for Protect and then a double edge into Hariyama, which let Lugia win the one-on-one against Kyogre. He also then had Flygon go for Earthquake, which OHKO'd his own Aggron and let Lugia recover for free. So soon Flygon was Hunter's only Pokemon, and as we saw during the first draft, Flygon really doesn't do well against Special Walls who are immune to Earthquake, so Noah pulled off the win. In Game 2, Noah switched up his leads, using Hariyama to fake out the Electrode while also pressuring Aggron into going for Protect rather than dealing damage. Electrode went down the first turn, which already put Noah in a way better position than Game 1. Hunter also chose to go for Ice Beam into Hariyama instead of a Water move, which would have been more effective especially in the rain, so Hariyama survived the double up. It went down immediately next turn, but its job was done. Raikou now took the field and Hunter had no answers. Kyogre went down, Aggron went down, and it fell to Kindred to deal with the rest of Hunter's team. Which it couldn't. Even without that paralysis, Lapras was still waiting in the back. Noah took the set. With our happy couple advancing to winners finals, we now turn our attention to the losers bracket. First up in losers were Ethan and Phil, and this is where we get to see the power of Slaking in action at last. I added Slaking to the pool as a risky option. With Stab Double Edge, it can be basically a delete button into a lot of enemy Pokemon, but its Drawn ability means it can only act every other turn, which gave Phil's Heracross a chance to do some work. With the notable exception of Mantine, Phil brought some pretty good answers into Slaking, with Heracross being able to two-shot it with Brick Break. Ethan ended up swapping in Mewtwo here to eat the attack, while as Milotic took down Phil's Regirock. Milotic was also given Ice Beam after the first draft so it could be used to better effect, so it's a fairly good Latias counter too. There was really only so much Phil could... Oh, okay, I suppose he could do that. By the way, this wasn't recorded, but apparently in pools, Phil was able to beat Josie exactly because of Quick Claw activating a few times, so he's really on fire right now. Mewtwo was faster than Latias and able to fire off a Shadow Ball before going down, which gave Slaking a chance to come back in. Phil chose to have Latias focus on Milotic however instead of Slaking, so Slaking brought Latias down before Heracross could finally finish it off. Phil then had no answers into Milotic. Looking at his team, he had a lot of Pokemon that were weak to Milotic, and even Mantine's HP Grass couldn't really do much against such a bulky Pokemon. Naturally, Ethan led Game 2 with Milotic and Mewtwo since those two can deal with Phil's team pretty well. Mewtwo is another Pokemon that I taught Shadow Ball to after the last draft, so these two together did a massive blow to Latias as Phil tried to wear Milotic down. Mewtwo took down Latias next turn, which let Milotic use Recover as Mantine simply couldn't do enough damage. Heracross came in but did not get the Quick Claw activation, so it went down in one shot as Mewtwo remained untouched. Phil's last Pokemon was Regirock, which couldn't really do much here. There wasn't really much Phil could do against this team. The one thing I could pick out here is that Porygon 2 might have been a good bring, since it's deceptively bulky and knows Thunder. But given that he had no answers on his team into Mewtwo really, it wouldn't have made a difference. Phil was knocked out of the tournament. Hunter was Ethan's next opponent. Given that Ethan had Ludicolo, Milotic, and Manectric, he really had no issues playing in the rain. Game 1, Hunter used Aggron's Protect and Flygon's Earthquake to deal solid damage and eat up Slaking's active turn. For some reason also, Ethan had Ludicolo go for Giga Drain and not Ice Beam on turn 1, so Flygon got another hit off before going down. On this second turn however, he swapped Aggron for Kyogre, so now Rain is active. Hunter also really likes going for Ice Beam with Kyogre instead of Hydro Pump, so Slaking lived to fire off a massive double edge into Kyogre, the recoil from which KO'd him. Mewtwo came out and the combination of Ludicolo and Mewtwo took Kyogre down and did massive damage to Electrode. A misplay from Ethan allowed Electrode to explode, but it didn't matter. Mewtwo survived, and even if it hadn't, Ethan had a fully healthy Milotic in the back which walled Hunter's Aggron. He took Game 1. Game 2, Hunter led with a more rain-centric strategy, while Ethan let Mewtwo take the stage alongside Ludicolo. Ludicolo is holding a Lumberry, which negates a turn 1 paralysis from Electrode's Thunder, and surprisingly it survived the double up from Kyogre. This time Ethan was able to take Electrode down and avoid the explosion, and Mewtwo set up a Calm Mind, so it was easily able to tank Ice Beam from Kyogre and get the one-shot in response with a critical hit Psychic. Mewtwo did go down the next turn, and Milotic took a Double Edge from Aggron as it swapped in, but that really didn't matter. There's almost nothing these two Pokemon can do against Milotic, especially with Slaking pressuring Aggron into going for Protect instead of damage. Kingdra went down, and Ethan still had a fully healthy Ludicolo in the back to take down Aggron. Protect stalling it made it so Slaking could do no damage, but a Rain boosted Surf got the easy KO and also knocked Noah out of the tournament. On the other side of losers, Jordan and Alex were fighting for a chance to keep playing. This was a match that I watched with particular interest since the winner would be my next opponent. Game 1 was a bit of a slaughter for Jordan as most of the Pokemon that he brought couldn't really do much into the monster that was Alex's Snorlax. Snorlax was the one Pokemon Alex truly wanted to have on his team after it did so much work for him in the first tournament, and it certainly paid off here. Now, I know this next bit may seem iffy, and I recognize that maybe I should have kept my mouth shut here. I did ask the guys later and they were okay with me doing this. We were all just talking to each other as the battle was going on, just having fun with it. And when Jordan commented that his team really didn't have answers into Snorlax, I pointed out that he did in fact have a Relicanth, who is rock type and has pretty solid physical stats. Relicanth was actually something that he drafted at my recommendation. He was considering Kabutops, but I pushed Relicanth as being a better water rock type due to its moveset. I'll need to add something better to Kabutops' kit for the next one, I suppose. Anyway, Relicanth is actually a fairly solid answer into a lot of Alex's team, since it has coverage against Rayquaza, Charizard, and Walrein, as well as walling the Snorlax. So in Game 2, Jordan decided to lead Relicanth and actually got a turn 1 Omni boost. What could possibly go... Okay, I will point out here that had Jordan gone for Walrein that turn with Ancient Power instead of Snorlax, the extra power from the Omni Boost would have almost certainly given him the KO and an easy win from there. As it was, he now had to steer. Ho-Oh does know HP Grass and has really good special defense, so it could easily tank a Surf from Walrein, as Alex had Snorlax use Rest. Espeon also recovered health that turn with a Morning Sun, so Jordan's positioning was pretty good as Ho-Oh took Walrein down. A Spadef drop on Snorlax was also promising, and then Snorlax's Sweep Talk pulled Double Edge, knocking Espeon out. But that's fine, Jordan still has a Regice, and Rayquaza really can't do much to this pair of Pokemon. Even though fire moves are super effective into Regice, its special defense is so high that Charizard can't really do much either, especially since Light Screen was still up. Double up from Blastburr and Double Edge did take Regice down, but Charizard then had to recharge and Ho-Oh finally got the KO on Snorlax. The superior Fire Flying type then won the 1v1. Time for Game 3. At this point, due to some weird setup constraints, all of us were in here watching these two duke it out, and this was legitimately one of my favorite battles from this whole thing. Alex mixed things up this time by bringing Gardevoir, who hadn't really made an appearance the last few battles. This Gardevoir does know Thunderbolt, so Jordan swapped in Ho-Oh, which as a reminder has crazy special defense, so this was not a stupid choice by any means. Gardevoir ended up connecting with a Hypnosis, but that's also fine. Ho-Oh is holding a Lumberry. Espeon using Reflect on turn 1 let it survive long enough to also get Light Screen off before going down, and it was now much safer to bring Relicanth in, since Ho-Oh can just 2-shot Gardevoir with Fire Blast. Except instead of Fire Blast, Jordan chose to use Aerial Ace for the guaranteed hit, which just barely didn't KO. Gotta love Espeon screens. Snorlax's Double Edge also didn't do much to Relicanth, especially through Reflect, so now Gardevoir went down and Relicanth got another Ancient Power off. Had Jordan targeted Gardevoir slot with the Ancient Power, he would have gotten a free KO on Charizard as it came in, but he didn't think to do that. To be fair, most of our players are more used to Gen 4 onward where this type of strategy wouldn't work, so I can't really fault him here. Light Screen came through again for Relicanth the following turn, allowing it to survive Charizard's Dragon Claw and then get the one shot with Ancient Power. Ho-Oh and Snorlax both used healing moves here, so the situation was mostly neutral as Reflect wore off. Ho-Oh got a crit HP Grass the next turn, doing massive damage to Walrein. Light Screen came through yet again to let Relicanth survive Ice Beam and get off a rest. The scales then balanced out on the next turn though, as Walrein also pulled a clutch survival into a rest. Both Relicanth and Walrein have Chester Berries to wake up from this, and Snorlax just doesn't need one. it's doing fine enough with Sleep Talk. Alex needed to take Relicanth down and fast before it could deal with Walrein. Snorlax could deal with most else on Jordan's team, but it had no answers to the Rockfish. Jordan did choose to divide his focus rather than prioritizing Walrein here, and a powerful hit from Snorlax put Ho-Oh on the ropes, giving Alex just enough tempo to survive and get the KO with a Sheer Cold. By the way, Alex apparently got 2 more Sheer Colds against Noah and Pool, so this Walrein is taking no prisoners today. Regice came in and managed to land a Zap Cannon on Walrein, which paralyzed it in addition to doing massive damage and let Ho-Oh finish it off on the next turn. It was now Snorlax against the world, but the world simply was not ready for Snorlax. It has the ability Thick Fat, which essentially gives it fire and ice resistance, and Alex apparently used up all of his bad Sleep Talk luck during the last tournament. Snorlax's Body Slams did great damage and got the paralysis on Regice. Regice missed a Zap Cannon, and even Ho-Oh's physical moves weren't strong enough. It then tried to recover stall, but got crit, and during all of this, Regice missed Zap Cannon, got fully paralyzed, and then missed again, so it wasn't contributing much here either. On the turn after Ho-Oh went down, Regice finally did connect with a Zap Cannon, and then Snorlax broke through and got another crit double edge, KOing Regice and leaving Snorlax with only 18 HP. By the way, had Snorlax KO'd itself with the recoil, the Gen 3 battle rules would have counted that as a loss for Alex. As it was, he had now knocked Jordan out of the tournament, which meant his next opponent was me. Game 1 I used the same Groudon Aerodactyl team that worked so well for me during our previous match. Alex led up with Rayquaza, who did solid damage into Aerodactyl I will say, but Snorlax's double edge missed the KO by 2 HP. Rayquaza has extreme speed, so I had to switch here, and I wildly underestimated how much damage it would do to my Sceptile. My poor boy went down to my own Earthquake before it even got a turn. Snorlax also went down here, so Walrein came out for Alex's side and Scizor for mine. Alex switched Rayquaza for Charizard here, which gave me a free KO since I targeted that slot with Groudon's Ancient Power. But speaking of free KOs, this is not great. I had no choice but to send Aerodactyl back in here and watch it fall to extreme speed. Scizor was able to do solid damage with Silver Wind, and I even got another Omni boost, but too late. Walrein survived in the red on the turn I got the boost and was able to heal with rest, and +1 Slash wasn't enough to bring down Rayquaza without a crit. I lost game 1. We both kept the same leads in game 2, except this time I doubled into Rayquaza with Ancient Power on turn 1. It wasn't enough to KO, and for some reason I thought Aerodactyl might live the follow-up Extreme Speed, which by the way it did not. And I don't know why I thought it would, but that's fine. I'll trade Aerodactyl for Rayquaza any day. I sent in Sceptile, and Alex sent in Tyranitar, who got KO'd instantly next turn by a critical hit Leaf Blade. Sceptile also went down that turn from a combo of Earthquake and Double Edge, but I was now in a position to play very aggressively and just Earthquake through the rest of Alex's team, aided by a Thunderbolt from Starmie. We won game 2. I thought about switching my leads in game 3, but I figured Alex might lead with Walrein, and I needed to have my answers ready for if it made an appearance. Sure enough, Alex led up with Walrein and Rayquaza, so naturally I doubled up into Walrein. However, I made a critical misplay here. I had both of my Pokemon go for Ancient Power, figuring that it would be enough to take Walrein down and would give me a chance for an Omni boost. Unfortunately, Walrein survived the hits in the red. Had I gone for Earthquake with Groudon, I would have been clear since Earthquake does more damage than Ancient Power thanks to Stab. As it was, Walrein was now able to fire off a Sheer Cold, which missed. If that had hit, there's a very high chance I would have just lost the tournament right there. Thanks to that miss, Aerodactyl had enough HP to comfortably take out Walrein before going down to Dragon Claw, and I got a free bulk up on Groudon. That +1 attack and defense changes a few damage rolls in my favor. Notably, I could now KO Rayquaza with a double up from Starmie and Groudon could now just one-shot Tyranitar with an Earthquake as well. That gave me a clean victory and knocked Alex out of the tournament. This now brought me head-to-head with Ethan to duke it out for a spot in Losers Finals. Now that I was free from the Rayquaza and the Tyranitar, I could set up Guaranteed Stun into turn 1 Solar Beam with Sceptile, which honestly did less to Ludicolo than I thought it would. Slaking also just one-shot Sceptile with Double Edge, but that's fine. I brought in Aerodactyl as Groudon used Earthquake. Next turn Ethan switched Slaking out, which you can do during its Truant turn, but then he brought it back in after Aerodactyl KO'd the Ludicolo, so it still took a massive hit from my Earthquake. Then he switched Dragonite out for Mewtwo, which meant Mewtwo took an Ancient Power on the switch, which gave Aerodactyl an Omni boost. Groudon also KO'd Slaking here, so Dragonite was forced back out and it took a massive hit from Ancient Power on the following turn. It survived to KO Groudon, but that's about all Ethan could do. Scizor and Aerodactyl finished off his remaining Pokemon with relative ease. Game 2 I led with Scizor and began setting up. Scizor has Sword Stance and Agility, so after using one of each it could do terrifying damage. I started with Agility as Aerodactyl immediately swung the tempo in my favor with a crit one-shot against Dragonite. On the next turn I had Scizor go for a Silver Wind in hopes of taking out Ludicolo. We missed by a sliver, but we did get the Omni Boost, and Aerodactyl got the KO immediately afterward. Milotic came out, revealing that Ethan hadn't brought Mewtwo to this battle. I had Scizor go for a Sword Stance now as Milotic took a hit like a champ, and brought Aerodactyl in range for Poison to finish it off. +3 attacks Scizor, then it easily finished off Milotic and later Slaking with some assists from Starmie, and get this, we get another Omni Boost. I know that's a lot of Omni Boosts even within this set alone, but please recognize that half of my Pokemon have moves that can trigger a boost, so by sheer relative weight it's bound to happen at some point. But yeah, that brings me to finals. So here we are. After all that struggle, the last 3 people in the tournament are me and the 2 people who knocked me into losers. This can only go well. If I wanted a chance to win, I'd need to beat them both, and have to defeat one of them twice due to me coming in from losers. Thinking back to how Josie destroyed me in my match with her, I was really hoping Noah would advance to Grand Finals from here, but we'd have to see. Josie kicked things off with her Zapdos Swampert combo, which perfectly countered Noah's leads of choice. He had to swap Raikou out immediately and just do what he could against Zapdos, which wasn't much considering that Lugia isn't all that powerful. Bulky enough to tank a hit, sure, but Zapdos is powerful enough and bulky enough to comfortably two-shot Lugia despite being slower. Noah switched gears the next turn and targeted Swampert, possibly hoping to arrange things so that Raikou could comfortably attack Zapdos. Unfortunately for him, Josie also switched gears and got a clean KO on Lapras while Swampert lowered Lugia's speed with a Rock Tomb. A fake out from Hariyama allowed Lugia to heal with Recover, but it wasn't enough to bring the legendary out of KO range. Raikou was forced back in and Swampert was still very much alive, giving Josie a very clean victory the following turn. Game 2, Noah went hyper aggressive into Zapdos with Lugia's Psycho Boost for great damage. If Lapras had survived the turn, he honestly could have gotten the KO, but a double up from Thunderbolt and Earthquake removed Lapras immediately. Hariyama came back in and used his patented fake out tech to stall Josie's Pokemon while Lugia dealt with the Zapdos. Now we have to see if he could deal with Latios, which objectively speaking Lugia can now that it has Shadow Ball. Lugia also has a lot more bulk than Latios does. Hariyama, however, just doesn't have enough power to deal with Swampert, so it became fairly safe for Swampert to tip the odds in Josie's favor with Rock Tombs while Latios healed with Recover. The 2 players ended up taking each other's legendaries down the same turn, leaving both of them with 2 Pokemon. And unfortunately for Noah, neither of his could really deal with the Swampert, especially after Arcanine nuked Hariyama with an Overheat. Josie moved on to Grand Finals while Noah stayed in the chair to battle me. I knew I couldn't lead Groudon against Noah since his Vileplume would just get Chlorophyll and nuke my team. I led with Sceptile and Aerodactyl instead and immediately used Toxic on Lugia, thereby making it much less of an issue. A double up from his leads KO'd Aerodactyl, but Aerodactyl did its job. I brought Scizor in and began setting up as Sceptile barely missed a KO on Lapras. Another double up in response KO'd my Sceptile, so now I had to bring Groudon in. I could only hope Scizor would be able to deal with Vileplume once it came out. Silver Wind finished off Lapras and gave me another Omni Boost, and I got a free Ancient Power on Vileplume as it came in, which also gave me an Omni Boost. Look, guys, I promise I didn't mod the game, I'm just that lucky apparently. Even at +1 speed, Groudon is still slower than Chlorophyll Vileplume, but it can now tank a Solar Beam pretty well thanks to the special defense boost. On the next turn I doubled up into Lugia since Raikou can't really hurt Groudon, and got another Omni Boost on Scizor. Anyway, yeah, I won Game 1. Game 2 I kept the same leads as Noah opted to send in Raikou. I took a gamble and assumed that since Raikou's only electric type move was Thunder, Noah would likely go for Rain Dance first instead of attacking Aerodactyl. My call was correct and I was able to keep Aerodactyl in to do some damage. Next turn I did have to switch though, so I brought in Groudon. Sun lowers the accuracy of Thunder to 50%, and Noah lost the coin flip as Thunder missed my Scizor. Lugia was doing solid damage with Psycho Boost despite me resisting the attack, but thanks to a turn 1 agility, Scizor was faster and able to KO Raikou. Unfortunately, +2 Scizor is not faster than +2 Vileplume, so I swapped Groudon out for Entei as Vileplume went for Solar Beam. Silver Wind barely missed a KO on Vileplume, but, well, you can probably guess what happened. At this point, I was actually out of Silverwind PP thanks to Lugia's pressure ability, so I finished off Vileplume with Slash. Noah's last remaining Pokemon was Lapras, and this was the point where I could get mileage out of Entei knowing Solar Beam. Our double up missed the KO, so Scizor finally went down, but now I could just bring Aerodactyl back in. Lugia suffered so many special attack drops from Psycho Boost that it was doing basically no damage, especially since Hydro Pump does reduce damage in the sun. Together, Entei and Aerodactyl closed out the set and got me to Grands. Which meant I now had to face Josie, whose team destroyed me in Winter Semis, and I'd have to beat her twice to win it all. I so want to be able to say that I was able to do it, y'all. I want to say that against all odds, I clutched up and was able to take her team down. But that is not the reality we live in, and it wasn't for lack of trying on my team's part. In fact, Aerodactyl managed to get 2 turn 1 Omni boosts during the set. However, Latios somehow immediately followed up with a critical hit Dragon Claw both times, which bypasses the Omni boost and instantly one-shots. Latios can actually 2-shot almost my entire team, and while Scizor can handle it, and even Aerodactyl can get some hits in before going down, the rest of my team just doesn't have answers. Zapdos' Drill Peck is a range to one-shot Sceptile, Arcanine destroys Scizor and can severely threaten Groudon as well with a stun-boosted Overheat, and there are very, very few lines that lead to victory here. The one game I won this set was in Game 2, where I was able to destroy both of her leads in one turn after Sceptile went down. That loss allowed Aerodactyl to get the 2-shot on Zapdos while Groudon came in and destroyed Swampert with Solar Beam. I even KO'd Arcanine early thanks to a crit from Aerodactyl, though Groudon went down soon after and I didn't bring Scizor into that fight. I had Starmie as an Arcanine counter and it had no moves that were effective into Latios. I took a gamble on Hyper Beam in hopes of taking Latios down, but missed the KO range by 5 HP and had to recharge the next turn. Had Josie taken the free KO on Aerodactyl that turn, I would have lost the battle, even after all the luck that I had those first 3 turns. Instead, she attacked Starmie, who survived the hit, and allowed me to get the KO next turn with another double up. But the amount of luck that I needed to get one win on Josie's team was insane, so you can imagine how the rest of the set went. I didn't even get the bracket reset. I went down, and Josie won the tournament. Honestly, really well drafted and well played from Josie. I really wish I could have made that set even remotely close. I had drafted what I thought was a really good team, and I was hoping I could take the whole tournament again like I did last time. I could sit here and bemoan the fact that, as stated previously, Josie's team had perfect counters to mine. I could also take an objective look and see that my supposedly great team had a major flaw, which is that I had no special walls. I was able to get by with Toxic and Ancient Power as my Latios answers last time because I had Ho-Oh, a powerful special wall who could soak up hits while Toxic did its work. This time I didn't have Ho-Oh. I had a bunch of Pokemon who get 2-shot by Latios and no healing options except Starmie's Recover, which is not enough given how frail Starmie is. Honestly, that to me felt like the worst bring in the tournament, since there are other Pokemon who could have done for me offensively what Starmie did, while having much better bulk. So, lesson learned. And honestly, this may sound weird, but I'm kind of glad also that I did my utmost and still lost. The whole premise of these tournaments was to create a balanced format where me and my friends could battle using all these Pokemon that I had raised, where me raising them wouldn't give me an advantage. So while I genuinely did do my best to win, I'm glad that I lost, because that means that this whole idea worked the way it was supposed to. And I still had a ton of fun. I hope that everyone else did too. We're already planning to do this again, but it probably won't be this year since marshalling so many people's schedules is difficult enough when we don't have holidays coming up. But in the meantime, I have a ton more content planned, so please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel if you want to see all of that as it comes out. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Until then, have a good one.